Hello there, Mandy here. Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart is not just a podcast. It's also a book, a free online grief group, and a one-on-one private coaching practice. If you are interested in learning more, visit mandykapehart.com to find out how restorative grief can help you heal heart, mind, body, and spirit. Welcome back to Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart. You are listening to episode 240, titled Living with Grief, Transforming Loss into Awareness and Healing. Have you ever noticed how grief can appear in your quietest moments and almost without warning? It changes how you see yourself and how you move through the world. So today, we're exploring what it means to truly live with grief in a way that transforms our loss into awareness and healing. By the end, I hope you might start to see grief not as something to escape, but as a guide for growth and deeper connection. Grief is not something you move through and leave behind. It is not a ladder you climb, a set of stages you check off, or a task you complete. For me, grief feels more like a spiral. A movement that does not loop endlessly or leave you stuck in the same place, but that moves you upward and deeper into yourself and community with others. Living with grief is more about surviving the pain. It's about seeing your grief clearly, gaining insight from its presence, acting with intention, and experiencing healing in ways that connect us to ourselves and to others. Grief is not something to get over. It is something to carry with awareness, intention, and openness to transformation. The first step in living with grief is to see it honestly. Too often we tell ourselves to just be strong and move on. But grief asks us to notice what is aching, what has shifted, and what has gone silent in us. It shows up in our bodies before our minds as tightness in the chest, exhaustion we cannot explain, or a heaviness that lingers long after tears have dried. Part of coping with grief is allowing yourself to see what is there without rushing to fix it. Seeing our grief clearly does not mean wallowing or endlessly ruminating. It means bearing witness to your own experience with respect and attention. Naming your losses, both large and small, helps you to understand what you are truly carrying. Acknowledgement itself is a radical step toward healing from our losses. And when you see your grief clearly, you begin to gain insight, not just about what you have lost, but about how loss is reshaping you. Grief changes your sense of identity. It alters your expectations, and it invites you into honest questions like, who am I now? What do I value? Who do I want to become? Because grief is not only about death. You can grieve lost relationships, the life you thought you would have, hopes that have faded, and parts of yourself that no longer fit who you are becoming. Grief expands your awareness and invites you to examine narratives that you have carried about strength, productivity, and emotional self-sufficiency, among many other things. Being present with our grief with curiosity rather than avoidance gives us a clearer view of our inner landscape and teaches us that grief is part of life's complexity. It is not a disruption to be fixed or avoided, but a transformation to be lived through. And once we begin to understand our grief, our next steps are intentional action. Action within restorative grief as a framework is not about overcoming your grief or becoming busy with healing tasks. It is about engaging with your grief in ways that honor your experience. Some intentional actions may include sitting with your emotions without numbing them, speaking your truth even when it is difficult, setting boundaries with people who do not hold space for your process, or embodying grief through movement, breath, or somatic awareness. Each intentional action you take helps integrate grief into your life in a way that feels alive rather than stuck. Healing from grief is also not a solo endeavor. Grief pulls us inward, but it also pushes us outward toward connection. Sharing our grief with others who are also grieving allows us to discover we are not alone. Writer and therapist Frances Weller explains that grief is communal and that humans are designed to carry sorrow together. Sharing space, stories, and rituals with others is essential to healing. And when grief is tended with others, it becomes sacred work, rich with meaning and support. Gathering with others to tell our stories, to sit in silence, or simply listen creates shared presence. These moments remind us that love and loss are universal. In my own experience, I have found it helpful to listen to other voices who reflect on grief in ways that resonate with restorative practice. These perspectives help me deepen my understanding and feel far less isolated in my own journeys. For example, grief author and hospital chaplain and someone I call friend, J.S. Park, emphasizes that there is no right timetable for grief. Grief is not something to hurry or suppress. Instead, grief asks for permission to be felt, to unfold at its own pace, and to be honored as part of our story. This teaching reminds me that giving myself permission to feel grief without judgment is a crucial step toward agency and self-compassion. Similarly, writer and death doula Elua Arthur reframes grief and death as natural, essential parts of life's creative process, which sounds so obvious when you say it, but so many of us pretend it's something we can avoid. Confronting our mortality allows me to see more clearly about what truly matters, how I love, how I show up, and how I connect with others. Elua's perspective encourages me to view grief not as a problem to solve, but as a guide that teaches me how to live fully. Weller's work also continues to inform my approach, emphasizing the sacred nature of shared grief. Being in community with others who hold space for sorrow transforms my isolation into connection. It teaches me that grief is not only a personal experience, but a communal practice that strengthens both individual and collective healing. The restorative grief model frames the experience as an upward spiral. You do not return to where you started. You carry loss as an integral part of who you are becoming throughout the entire process of becoming. And each time you return to grief with attentive sight, insight, and intentional action, you are moving forward with depth. The upward spiral reflects your growth, your resilience, and integration of loss into your life story. Living with grief means creating space for both yourself and others, whether around a table, in a quiet walk, through shared rituals, or simply in conversation. In these moments of shared presence, sorrow and connection become intertwined, reminding us that grief is not something to carry alone. It is a way to see loss clearly, learn from its depth, act from compassion, and discover parts of yourself and others that you might never have known. Carrying grief with awareness becomes a lifelong practice of growth, connection, and transformation. Thank you for listening to episode 240 of Restorative Grief. Living with grief is not linear, and staying present with loss while caring for yourself takes intention and practice. Moments of awareness, connection, and intentional action shape how we carry grief, how we grow, and how we show up for the people and the life around us. If this is your first time here, I'm so glad you joined. Consider subscribing, leaving a review, or becoming a patron. Supporting helps this work move forward and opens access to bonus episodes, reflective exercises, and guided practices for carrying your grief with care. Thank you to my present and past patrons, and to you for considering joining our Patreon group as well. And as always, before we go, one last thing. Please remember, the only solution for grief is to do the work of grieving. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week.